Caesar Capital. Hope you're well. It's the 17th of February 2024. I'm going to have a look at Bitcoin quickly. Then we'll have a look at the altcoin market, and we'll have a look at the total market as well at the end. So Bitcoin looking really, really strong. Obviously, we're in a bull market. We've been in a bull market for a considerable amount of time now. And I think anyone sort of suggesting that we are still in a bear market needs their head testing, because the definition of a bull market is printing higher lows on higher time frames, and that's what we're doing. We're printing higher lows on higher time frames. So we're definitely, in my opinion, in a bull market. But the question now is, where do we go from here? Now, we are, despite looking extremely strong, we're down 1.67% on the day. We've had this sort of really strong move to the upside. So the question really is, where would be the next level of interest if we were to have a pullback? And in my opinion, it's this area here. It's this area of about 47 to 48K. It's a significant area. And when you're trading, you need to look at significant, or look for significant price points, because sometimes the market really does react in those significant areas. And the reason why I think this area is a significant price point is this. Back in March 22, this was the area that Bitcoin said, I've had enough, and I'm definitely now going into a bear market, and I'm going to drop down a significant amount, which was around about 67% from that area. It's also significant because it was part of the Elliott wave ABC correction that Bitcoin loves to do during a bear market. And you can see here, this was the peak in November 21. We came down for the A, then Bitcoin came up, couldn't get past this point of 48K, then it dropped down for its C. So you had this nice ABC correction, and it was that area of about 47, 48K that Bitcoin became exhausted, and it just couldn't take any more. And it rolled over, and it came back down to its final low of around 15, 16K. So this area is an area of absolute significance. It's a price point of significance, because Bitcoin was simply not able to get over that during the first part of the bear market back in March 2022. But what it's done is it's broken through it, okay? It's broken through that area, which is really, really bullish. It's very, very significant. And for me, if the bulls were going to defend any area, they would defend that area to begin with. Let's look at it on a daily chart. Might be a bit clearer. So this area of 47 to 48K, I would say if there was going to be a pullback, this area would be defended. Okay, so about, anything between 48.6 down to about 47K. But this area, I would say the bulls would heavily defend. There is going to be an opportunity this weekend for that to happen. So it'd be interesting to see what happens if the bears are able to get it down. I mean, it would be just very, very healthy, to be quite frank, to get Bitcoin down a little bit, because it seems to be moving parabolically at the moment. Which is great, but we need to have a bit of a breather. It needs to take some air before it continues to the upside. So that would be my first area, around the sort of 48.6 down to the 47K area. The next area would be this cluster here, around the sort of 42K mark. Maybe it'll come down, test that area. So that would be my next area of interest. Basically within that range, kind of makes sense that it would come down, and this area might be tested. And if Bitcoin falls through that area, then there's a high likelihood that it might want to come down to this kind of Spartan area of support, which I've called it for many months now, of around about 30K, maybe 31K. So first area of interest is this area of 48, 47. Then the next around about the 41, 42, and then there's this area of 30K, which is Spartan support. Do I think we're going to come down to 30K? Possible, it's very, very possible. I mean, what would that be? A move from here? That would be a 38% move to the downside. That might scare a lot of people. Some people watching this video might switch me off now and say that's never going to happen. But these sorts of moves do happen. Okay, and if you go back, and even in a bull market, if you go back to, let's go all the way back to 2016. So here we are in 2016. Let's take a look and at all the significant areas of which Bitcoin pulled back. So there's this area here, pulled back. There was a pullback here. There was a pullback here. Nice one here and one here. Let's just measure those out and see how deep they are, and then you'll get an idea of what Bitcoin likes to do. So there's a 38% correction there. This one was a 37% correction. This one was a 34% correction. This one here, 40% correction. And then we have this one, 40% correction. So, all of these sort of deep pullbacks are quite normal for Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin were to come back and test this area of 31K, 32K or so, it's going to be about 37 to 40% correction. So that actually would be quite normal. And obviously people like Capo, all those twits would be saying this is the beginning of the bear market, yada, yada, yada. Although I think he's been calling this a bear market since God knows when, but yeah. That would just be very, very healthy and quite normal. And obviously it would scare a lot of people. But do I think that's going to happen? I think it's possible, but I don't think it's likely. And I'll tell you why. Because at the moment, BlackRock, Fidelity et al. Are buying Bitcoin at an alarming rate. And I just don't think it would have that opportunity to go that deep. But what we've got to remember is Bitcoin has done that in the past, has always done that in the past. So it's something that we have to be alive to and take the opportunity if that does happen. Because really, if Bitcoin comes down to 31K, that is nothing but, in my view, an absolute classic opportunity for anyone who is looking to get into the market or looking to bolster their position in the market. If we drop down 40%, that's going to cause absolute carnage within the altcoin market. The altcoins will drop anything between 40 to 60% if that were the case. But it'd be quite interesting to see what happens with Bitcoin in the next few weeks, really, because as it stands, Bitcoin is just, we are now kind of, we're 34% away from the all-time high. Okay, so it's looking super strong. So either Bitcoin is going to have a nice, deep, healthy pullback, and we are going to trend sideways and grind to the upside into the halving, or it's just going to go. Okay, and if it goes, it's going to go. But there will be pullbacks, but the pullbacks will be very, very quick. They'll be over in a day or two, and it will continue to the upside. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think for now, Bitcoin looks pretty strong, and we just got to keep an eye on the market. So let's have a look at Bitcoin dominance. Okay, Bitcoin dominance, as I've been saying for over a year now, Bitcoin dominance, in my view, wants a little bit more to the upside, not too much more. But for me, I think Bitcoin dominance wants, and I did a long video on this, my last video, it wants about 58%. So if you want a really detailed reason why I think it's going to 58%, then have a look at the last video I posted on YouTube, and that will give you a very detailed and comprehensive explanation of why I say that. But it seems, in short, 58% seems a good percentage for it to go to. The reason why is this sort of classic area of support back in May 2019 and August 2020 will now be an area of resistance for Bitcoin dominance. And when Bitcoin gets close to its all-time high or pushes up towards its all-time high, it's going to suck the air out of the room for a moment, and its dominance is going to increase pretty dramatically. We're not talking very much here. We're talking another 7% to the upside. Its dominance is going to increase dramatically. And I think it's got to get up here to the 58, maybe 60% area. And then once it's made that, and then it starts to drop, that is the indicator for you that the altcoin season is going to begin. So I think there's a little bit more left on Bitcoin dominance, and I still think the call I made over a year ago, 58%, I still think it's absolutely possible. I think it's more likely than not, given where we are in the cycle now and where Bitcoin is, because if Bitcoin is going to start chugging towards its all-time high very soon, or towards the halving, and of course, we're very close to the halving now, the halving being about 15th of April, I think it's going to suck the air out of the room. It's going to increase its dominance by at least 7 to 10%. And then once it's done that, then that will be the green light for the altcoin market to start absolutely ripping to the upside. So just looking quickly at the total. So this is total, which is essentially the entire crypto market cap. I think it's basically the top 150 altcoins, including Ethereum and Bitcoin. So it's pretty much everything with anything or market cap of substance. And this is an extremely strong looking chart. And if we just take a look at it, going backwards, as it were, into history, we can see that this was the top in January 2018, a time I remember well. And what did Bitcoin do? It broke, the total market cap broke through this area of 752 billion up to the upside, giving a total market cap of around about 3 trillion in November 2021. And then it dropped down, but it held this area of support, which is of absolute significance. I mean, it was a perfect retest, wasn't it, of this breakout. So you had this breakout here, Bitcoin came out, broke out, came up, back down, retested, and now it's grinding to the upside. The total market cap is grinding to the upside, and we are going to make a higher high at some point in the future. Be quite interesting to see where this goes. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if we get to about 8 trillion. Let's have a look. Let's just do a quick trend-based fib extension. So 3 anchor points, obviously, on a trend-based fib extension. The first one being the low, the second one being the high, okay, and then you bring it back down to the low again, which was here. This was obviously the first move. We'll bring it over a bit and we'll put the 3618 in there. And there we are. It hit the 3618 perfectly. Now let's do projection for the next move. So we've got the low. This is our first anchor point to the high, second anchor point. Then we bring it down to this low here, and that gives you an idea of where it's going to go. Now let's take out the 3618 because obviously we'll take out the 2 there because it reached the 3618 on its first move, as it were. Let's take out the 3 here. And the reason why let's take the 3 out, because I want to be conservative and I'm going to take into account diminishing returns, okay? I know there's massive argument at the moment about diminishing returns and exponential returns, but at the end of the day, let's just be conservative. All right, let's not go overboard here, and let's have a look at what we would get as a total market cap if the total market cap were to hit the 2618 this time rather than the Fibonacci 3618. And what do we get? We get about 8 trillion, which, to be quite frank, is, I think, absolutely doable. Okay, so we've got a lot of room here, essentially 8 trillion. So we've got sort of 6 trillion of weight to put on here. And if that happens, there are going to be some serious moves to the upside with altcoins. Bitcoin, if we can get to about the 8 trillion, we'll be trading anywhere between, depending on Bitcoin dominance at the time, anywhere between 150 to sort of 180K or so. It very much depends on its dominance. But yeah, I mean, the returns would be pretty damn good. Okay, so that's why I think the conservative sort of play would be with the total market cap. Grabbing the excuse me, the 3618 on the last occasion, and diminishing returns, we go to the 2618, which would take us to 8 trillion. So not bad at all. So really, the sort of long and short of everything is that the market is looking pretty strong at the moment. I think that there needs to be a bit of a correction at some point. I thought there was going to be a much deeper correction when we were up here at the sort of 41K mark. I thought we were going to come back down and test 31K, but no, Bitcoin doesn't want to do that. So I think if we are going to have a bit of a pullback, then so this sort of 48K mark looks like a classic area that Bitcoin might want to test as support. The big question as well, and I'll end with this, is Bitcoin going to continue to follow the 4-year cycle, or is it going to peak out a little bit earlier? Now, if you want to understand the 4-year cycle, then I suggest you go back and look at all the videos I've done on the 4-year cycle, and you will then probably understand it. But in a nutshell, Bitcoin trades from peak to peak and bottom to bottom within 4 years. So it takes 4 years for Bitcoin to get from one bottom to its next bottom, and 4 years to get from its last peak to its next peak. And that's the way it's traded since inception, okay? But there is a distinct possibility that Bitcoin may well be looking to peak out sooner than what we would anticipate on the 4-year cycle. If it was going to peak out and follow the traditional 4-year cycle, it would be about 208 weeks or thereabouts. It's not an exact science, but 208 weeks from the last peak takes us to around about October and November 2025. Here we go, 208 weeks. So that takes us to about the 3rd of November 2025. So that would be where, Bitcoin, if it follows the traditional 4-year cycle, that's where it would be looking to peak out this cycle. However, there is a strong argument at the moment that potentially Bitcoin might peak out a little bit sooner and print what we call a left translated cycle. And that looks very possible at the moment because Bitcoin is looking really strong. It's like 30+% away from its all-time high. It hasn't traded this well in previous cycles. It's always rejected off the 786 and had a significant pullback of about 30 to 40%. It hasn't done that in this cycle, and that's probably a lot to do with all of the buying that's going on with the ETFs. Plus, we've got a Bitcoin halving coming up at the moment, 900 Bitcoins a day mined. Once the halving happens, that's going to be 450 Bitcoins a day mined. So there's going to be a massive supply shock. So it's quite possible that we might peak out sooner than November 2025. And if that's the case, I would imagine Bitcoin peaks out probably at some point towards the end of this year, potentially. Here is the 4-year cycle chart. And this chart you can, or if you want a full analysis of this chart, I suggest you go back and look at my other videos on this. But essentially what's quite interesting about this is that Bitcoin never, or it tends to breach its all-time high around about the midpoint. And you can see the midpoint in each cycle. The very bold black vertical lines represent the low in each cycle. So you can see there was a low here. This was the low here in this cycle. This was the low here. And so these represent those lows. And of course, from one low to the next low is 208 weeks, which is 4 years. And the midpoint of that is halfway through. Now, what's interesting is Bitcoin never usually, or never has historically, breached its all-time high prior to the midpoint. So you can see on this chart here, this was the previous all-time high. In fact, this was the first high. This was the first midpoint. It broke through the previous all-time high just as it got to the midpoint. This was the next all-time high. This is the midpoint on the next cycle. It breached the all-time high or started knocking on the door at the midpoint. This was the next all-time high, the next bottom. This was obviously the next point back in November 2020 when it started to tap on the door of the all-time high and then finally breaking through it in December. And of course, that was at the midpoint. So looking at this chart, the midpoint is around about sort of end of October, beginning of November. So if we start breaching the all-time high significantly prior to the midpoint here, then that would be a true indication for me that we are going to peak out a lot sooner than we would anticipate peaking out under a traditional 4-year cycle. And as we just looked at a moment ago on the other chart, 4 years would take us to around about the sort of November point, November 2025. So the chances are, well, it would be ridiculous to suggest that we're going to continue to the upside into November 2025. That's not going to happen in my view. And what would happen is that we would start peaking out a lot sooner than that. And then we would find our low again at the cycle low of around about October or so 2026. But anyway, it'd be interesting to see what happens with that. And for me, it's going to be a real sign would be peaking, or not peaking out, but breaking through this all-time high significantly prior to the midpoint. So there we are. So that's the video for today. I hope it's been helpful. If you want to join the group, the link is in the description. Either reach out to me on Twitter or send me an email and we can get you into the group. Have a look at the website, have a look at the levels of tiered membership, make your choice and let us know. But all in all, everything's looking pretty good at the moment. And I think there's a pretty big move to come. So take care and speak to you soon. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.